In the history of criminal cases in Vietnam, few incidents have shocked and haunted the public as deeply as the case of Doan Van Sang, a name that would later be known simply as Sang throughout the investigation. This was not just a brutal loss of life. It was a chilling warning about how distorted online content can reshape human behavior in the real world. After days of interrogation and examination, the investigative report and the suspect's testimony were finally released. The following is a faithful retelling of those findings, with sensitive details moderated for clarity. On November 25, 2025, the PA5 Division of the Lang Son Provincial Police detected disturbing videos circulating on social media. These clips showed an unidentified man behaving abnormally before another individual appeared and committed a violent act leading to his death. The videos spread rapidly. Online users soon identified the victim as Sang and Dat, born 1989, a name that would later be known simply as Dat throughout the investigation. And suspicion fell on Sang, a market management officer. The same day, the case was transferred to the PCO2 Criminal Investigation Division for verification. On November 27th, Vietnam's National Forensics Unit, C09, confirmed that the video showed no signs of AI manipulation or fabrication. On November 28th, a local village leader in Hung Yen reported that the victim was indeed Dat. DNA samples were collected from his mother. Investigators then searched 103 Chi Lang Street, the location seen in the video. They immediately noted a kitchen identical to the one in the clips, a restroom matching the footage, 3 human teeth beneath the kitchen sink, bone fragments under the septic tank. Every clue confirmed the worst. Later that day, officers searched Sang's residence at 195 Nguyen Phi Kien Street. They seized 2 jackets worn in the video, a heater identical to the one recorded, and a phone belonging to the victim, found in the hands of Sang's older sister. She said Sang had simply given it to her to use. According to Sang's testimony, he met Dat online around 2020. Dat introduced him to a foreign website hosting deviant and violent content. Access required VPN and invitation. For years, Dat sent him disturbing images and videos. Dat repeatedly urged him to participate. By mid-2024, after years of desensitization, Sang finally agreed. On November 25, 2025, Dat visited Sang at the market management office, bringing 2 knives himself. On January 25, 2025, the act unfolded exactly as later seen in the viral video. Afterward, Sang disposed of the body in multiple locations. This was not a crime born of anger, conflict, or impulse. It was the end result of 5 years of exposure to extreme online content, psychological desensitization, a toxic dynamic between 2 individuals who enabled each other's worst impulses. Internet content did not cause the crime in a single moment. It shaped the minds of both men over half a decade. Not every crime leaves investigators speechless, but this one, unfolding in Vietnam, did. Not because of brutality, not because of the viral video, but because of the relationship between the victim and the perpetrator, and the way the internet slowly reshaped their minds for years. The deeper investigators dug, the more they realized this wasn't a crime that happened one night. It was a crime built one message at a time, one video at a time, 1 year at a time. From the moment investigators examined the videos found on the victim's phone, one thing was clear. These were not normal clips, not horror movies, not staged effects, not edited gore. They were raw, real, and sourced from private online communities that required an invite, a VPN, and a willingness to enter the darkest corners of the web. And Sang's testimony confirmed everything. I used a VPN. Dat sent me the links. These communities weren't just illegal content groups. They were spaces where violence was glorified, victims were fetishized, and suffering was romanticized. This explained why Dat was the one urging, Dat was the one pushing, Dat was the one who wanted to be harmed. Dat was the one who even prepared the knives. Experts called this a rare psychological phenomenon, a case where the victim influenced the future offender, not the other way around. During the first interrogations, investigators noticed something unnerving about Sang. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared. He wasn't frantic. He was blank. His voice stayed flat, almost emotionless, as he answered every question. He sent me a lot of videos. At first, I watched out of curiosity. After a while, it felt normal. Those 3 sentences chilled investigators more than the videos themselves, because psychologists know exactly what they mean. Years of exposure to extreme content can numb the human brain. There's a term for it: desensitization. The more you see something shocking, the less shocking it becomes. Slowly, quietly, the brain adapts. Boundaries fade. Morality erodes. And by 2024, Sang no longer reacted like a normal person would. He wasn't born violent, but after years of this digital poison, he no longer recognized the line he was crossing. When investigators entered 103 Chi Lang, they described it as stepping directly into the viral video. Everything matched. The same tiles on the floor, the same sink placement, the same kitchen layout, the same wall marks behind the counter. Then they found 3 teeth beneath the sink and bone fragments in the septic area. No more speculation, no more theory. The physical evidence confirmed. The incident in the video happened here, exactly as shown. A forensic officer reportedly paused for several seconds when he saw the teeth. There are moments in this line of work where silence says everything. The victim's phone was not at the crime scene, not in a river, not smashed, not hidden. It was in the hands of the suspect's older sister. She told police, "He gave it to me. I didn't know it belonged to anyone else." Investigators had to determine, did she know what happened? Did she know where the phone came from? Did she suspect anything? Depending on her level of awareness, she could face charges like receiving stolen property, Article 323, harboring a criminal, Article 389, or failing to report a crime, Article 390. But at that moment, all investigators saw was a woman completely blindsided. She had no idea her brother had been involved in anything like this. Nobody did. The most unsettling aspect: the victim was not tricked, forced, or ambushed. He had encouraged this behavior for years. He messaged constantly, sent images, shared videos, suggested scenarios, pushed boundaries. Investigators documented a pattern. The more content Dat sent, the more normalized the violence became for both of them. This wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a slow slide, a 5-year descent fueled by the worst corners of the internet. November 25th, 2025. The day all boundaries were gone. That afternoon, Dat arrived at the market management office carrying 2 knives. He knew why he came, and Sang knew what was expected. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a moment of rage. It was the final step in a path they had built together, message by message, video by video. And the video that went viral was simply the recording of that moment. When investigators realized the third suspect was the internet itself, as investigators pieced together the timeline, they reached an eerie conclusion. The crime did not originate in the real world. It originated online. The internet was the catalyst, the tutor, the amplifier, the environment where both men lost their moral compass. Without the internet, Investigators believed this crime would not have existed. Most criminal cases follow a familiar pattern. A motive, a conflict, a moment of rage, a predictable path leading to tragedy. But this case in Vietnam destroyed that pattern completely. There was no hatred, no revenge, no financial dispute, no sudden emotional outburst. Instead, investigators found something far more disturbing. Two men reshaped by years of exposure to extreme online content. A slow psychological collapse that neither recognized until it was too late. The investigation wasn't uncovering a crime, it was uncovering a process. When forensic analysts confirmed that the teeth and bone fragments matched the victim's DNA, all doubt evaporated. The video was real. The location was real. The death was real. One investigator later wrote, "When the DNA came back positive, we realized this case had no alternate explanation. No misunderstanding, no illusion, everything was real." That moment changed the investigation's tone, from cautious to grimly certain. Across multiple interrogation sessions, one detail unsettled investigators more than anything else: Sang's complete emotional flatness. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't trying to justify himself. He answered calmly, evenly, like he was reading a report. He sent many videos. At first, I just watched out of curiosity. After a while, I got used to it. To investigators, this was worse than denial. It was the hallmark of someone whose moral responses had been worn down over years. A psychologist assisting the investigation noted, "This is not the mindset of a born criminal. It's the product of long-term exposure to extreme material and the gradual erosion of normal emotional boundaries." Nothing about his voice was angry or vengeful. Nothing suggested thrill or guilt, just emptiness. Mapping a crime timeline that spanned 5 years. To understand the case, investigators created a timeline, something unusual in its length and detail. 2020, they meet online. Dat sends links to foreign websites. 2021, Sang watches content at low frequency. 2022, Dat sends more disturbing videos. Sang becomes less reactive. 2023, both men start commenting on the content. Moral lines begin fading. 2024, Dat proposes a real-life act, offers to pay to rent a location. July 2024, Sang begins agreeing, mentally crossing the point of no return. November 25, 2025, Dat brings 2 knives to Sang's workplace. January 25, 2025, the act happens, exactly as seen in the video. This timeline made one thing clear. The crime was not a spontaneous event. It was a slow slide into darkness, shaped by the internet over half a decade. When motive no longer means anything. In most criminal investigations, the question is simple. Why did he do it? Money? Revenge? Jealousy? Fear? But here, the answer stunned even experienced officers. There was no traditional motive, only long-term psychological distortion. This was not a heat-of-the-moment crime, not a drunken impulse, not a violent outburst. It was the final chapter of a disturbing online echo chamber that both men participated in for years. The crucial question that exposed everything. In one decisive interrogation, an investigator asked, "If Dat hadn't sent all those videos and messages, would you have done this?" For the first time, Sang hesitated. Then he answered, "No, probably not." This single response confirmed the investigator's theory. The offender didn't originate the idea. The victim influenced the offender. Both were drawn into a shared cognitive distortion. The internet shaped their mindset over years. This wasn't a case of manipulation or coercion. It was a gradual erosion of judgment in both individuals. The legal debate that shook the country. Public debate exploded around one question. If the victim consented, does it reduce the killer's liability? But under Vietnamese law and most global legal systems, the answer is clear. The right to life is absolute. It cannot be surrendered, transferred, or negotiated. Meaning, messages from the victim's suggestions, the victim preparing knives, a mutual agreement. None of this changes the legal nature of the act. Vietnam does not recognize a right to die, even medically. Consent does not reduce or eliminate criminal liability. So legally, the conclusion was inevitable. This was murder, with aggravating circumstances, at the highest degree. The victim's phone, found with the suspect's sister, became the strongest piece of evidence. Through digital forensics, investigators extracted deleted messages, browsing history, VPN logs, timestamps, shared media, long-term patterns of communication, all proving the relationship was long-term. The content was extreme. The requests were repeated. Both men participated. The idea developed over years. Nothing was forced or coerced. The phone didn't just record crime. It recorded the collapse of two human minds. The deeper investigators went, the clearer the truth became. This was not a typical crime. It was psychological decay, amplified by the internet, reinforced through a 5-year online relationship, culminating in a tragedy neither fully understood. It was a crime born in the digital world, not the physical one. When the investigation findings were released, Vietnam experienced something rare, a nationwide shock, not because of physical brutality, not because of sensationalism, but because of how the crime formed. Through years of exposure to dangerous online content, through a distorted relationship, and through consent that was psychologically warped long before the crime occurred. This case pushed Vietnamese society into a difficult confrontation. What happens when the internet reshapes a person's morals? As soon as the video appeared online, countless people questioned, is this deepfake? Is it staged? Is someone trying to frame these men? Could this be footage from another country? In the age of AI, skepticism is normal. But Vietnam's National Forensics Unit, C09, quickly analyzed the footage. The conclusion came back fast and firm. No AI manipulation detected. No evidence of editing. Lighting, shadow, and movement are naturally consistent. That finding hit like a hammer. It meant the video was genuine, the actions were real, and the investigation had to escalate immediately. The most heated debate across Vietnamese social media revolved around one question. If the victim asked for it, is the perpetrator still guilty of murder? Online communities argued endlessly. Some believed mutual agreement mattered. Others said it changed nothing. But Vietnam's legal system, like many around the world, is absolutely clear. Consent has no legal effect in matters of life and death. The right to life cannot be surrendered. The right to life cannot be transferred. No one can give permission to be killed. And Vietnamese law does not recognize a right to die. This meant the messages, the requests, the preparation of weapons by the victim, and the mutual agreement did not reduce the offender's criminal responsibility in any way. The official legal conclusion: this was unlawful taking of life at the highest severity. When the video began circulating, some people tried to find the full version, or share it for confirmation, or send it privately to friends. Immediately, the Ministry of Public Security issued warnings: do not share, do not store, do not upload, do not distribute, Do not treat the video as curiosity or entertainment. Social networks were instructed to remove related posts. This became one of the rare cases where Vietnamese authorities and media had to coordinate rapidly to prevent secondary harm. An official later explained, "We were not only dealing with a criminal case, we were also stopping harmful content from spreading." The public was stunned when investigators confirmed the crime took place in a government office, Market Management Team Number 4, a place where staff worked daily, a place with documents, schedules, foot traffic, a place people assumed was safe. This was not a forest, an abandoned building, or a remote area. It was a workplace, a residential space, a structured environment. Investigators immediately wondered, why would Sang choose such a risky location? Why not go somewhere secluded? Why did he think it was safe? His answer revealed a deeper psychological distortion. "I thought no one would notice." Exposure to extreme content for too long had dulled his sense of real-world danger. Online, everything felt isolated, private, invisible. He carried that illusion into the physical world. The victim's phone, found with Sang's sister, became the investigation's central piece of evidence. Forensic teams extracted message history, deleted texts, browsing logs, timestamps, VPN activity, shared media, GPS traces, long-term communication patterns. This data proved beyond doubt. The relationship was long-standing. The disturbing content was shared over years. The requests were repeated. Both men were active participants. No coercion occurred. The psychological distortion developed gradually. One investigator wrote, "The phone is the case's strongest witness. Many Vietnamese people were unaware of dark web communities, dangerous online groups, extreme content sites, psychological impacts of repeated exposure, how anonymity amplifies harmful behavior." This case forced the public to confront a reality they had overlooked. The internet can change a person, slowly, silently, and completely. Not in a week, not in a month, but over years. A smartphone, a browser, and a VPN were enough to spark a tragedy. This case forced the public to confront a reality they had overlooked. The internet can change a person slowly, silently, and completely. Not in a week, not in a month, but over years. Experts noted something difficult to articulate. Dat was the legal victim, the one who lost his life. Sang was a psychological victim. Fear. Everything in his name was everywhere. Another teen was also polled and proud to become part of. Someone whose judgment was eroded by long-term exposure to harmful content. This is not to excuse the crime, but it helps explain its origin. Both men were consumed by a digital environment that normalized the unthinkable. In the end, the internet became the third participant in the crime. This case shocked Vietnam not because of what happened at the end, but because of how it began and how it grew, unnoticed and unchallenged. It made families reassess what their children access online, what hidden communities exist, and how long-term exposure can reshape a person. It made law enforcement reconsider digital crime prevention, online psychological risks, emerging patterns in modern criminal behavior. The story was no longer just about two men. It became a warning, one of the most powerful ever seen in Vietnam's digital age. As investigators pieced together the timeline, one question lingered above all others. How should the law handle a crime where the victim themselves asked for the act? This was the point where public opinion divided sharply. Some believed the perpetrator was fulfilling a request. Others believed the perpetrator was fully responsible regardless of consent. But Vietnamese law, like most legal systems worldwide, is absolutely clear. Article 19 of the 2013 Constitution of Vietnam states, "Everyone has the right to life. Human life is protected by law. This right is inviolable and cannot be taken away or transferred." This meant, even if Dat begged, even if he prepared the knives, even if he offered payment, even if he signed an agreement, even if the act was meticulously planned together, none of it reduces criminal responsibility. Vietnamese law does not recognize assisted suicide, euthanasia, voluntary death agreements, and in criminal justice, victim consent in a case involving death is legally worthless. The state protects the right to life, even from the individual who possesses it. Thus, what happened was still murder in the highest legal category. Investigators listed multiple aggravating factors under Article 123 of the Penal Code, including cruelty, premeditation, preparation of weapons, attempts to destroy evidence, the act causing public alarm, negative impact on social order, disturbing the security of an entire province. Each of these factors alone is severe. Together, they form one of the strongest aggravating profiles possible. The legal outcome became nearly inevitable: the maximum penalty, death. One surprising detail in the early investigation was the presence of the victim's phone in the hands of the suspect's older sister, DTL. She claimed, "My brother gave it to me to use." This immediately placed her under legal scrutiny. Depending on her awareness of the phone's origin, she could face Article 323. This applies. She knew the phone was not rightfully owned, even if she thought it was stolen property rather than tied to murder. This is already a criminal offense. Article 389. If she knew about the crime, knew the phone belonged to the victim, and still helped hide or use evidence, she could face serious charges. Article 390. Even if she didn't participate, if she learned information about the crime and chose silence, the law applies. Beyond criminal penalties, the law requires civil compensation for the victim's family. This includes funeral expenses, emotional damages for immediate relatives, long-term financial support for dependents such as children, elderly parents, grandparents, anyone the victim financially supported. If Sang is unable to pay, the obligation does not disappear. His estate remains responsible. By the time all forensic reports, digital evidence, and testimonies were compiled, the initial investigation reached its conclusion. The crime scene was confirmed. The act was captured in the viral video. The suspect confessed. The weapons were identified. The relationship timeline was established. The psychological development was documented. Aggravating factors were listed. And the victim's identity was confirmed through DNA evidence. Vietnamese police announced that the suspect Sang was formally arrested. But even with the suspect behind bars, something lingered, a shadow that stretched beyond legal papers and courtrooms. The tragedy forced Vietnam to face a harsh truth. The human mind can be altered slowly, quietly, and dangerously by the content it consumes. What happened between Dat and Sang was not sudden. It was not a momentary lapse. It was the result of years of exposure, deviant communities, dark web content, shared fantasies, psychological erosion, an online echo chamber with no boundaries. In that digital world, the unthinkable eventually felt normal, and in real life, it became fatal. One investigator summarized the case with a single haunting sentence: "This was a crime with one offender, one dead victim, and one invisible accomplice, the internet." When the initial investigation officially closed, law enforcement in Vietnam made a clear announcement: The evidence is overwhelming. The suspect is identified. The crime is confirmed. The perpetrator has been arrested. But the end of the investigation was not the end of the story, because what this case left behind was something far deeper than a criminal act. It left behind a warning: the arrest of Sang. With the crime scene verified, the evidence aligned, and the confession documented, police formally detained Sang. His actions met every legal element of murder under the most severe classification. Authorities emphasized extreme brutality, premeditated intent, prolonged psychological buildup, damaging impact on public order, and the nationwide shock it caused. According to Vietnam's penal code, with multiple aggravating factors converging at once, the highest penalty, death, became almost inevitable. Even after Sang was arrested, the emotional tremor did not fade. Vietnamese society kept asking, how did this happen? How did a relationship formed online evolve into something deadly? How did exposure to violent content reshape two ordinary men? This wasn't a crime driven by revenge, debt, hatred, or impulse. It was something more disturbing, a moral collapse caused by years of consuming toxic online content. And it forced the nation to reconsider what the internet can do to the human mind. The tragedy can't be fully understood without acknowledging the environment that enabled it. Websites hosting extreme material, online groups normalizing violence, communities pushing boundaries of morality, long-term exposure erasing empathy, repeated messages encouraging dangerous acts. For years, the two men lived in a psychological echo chamber where boundaries dissolved. Violence became fantasy. Fantasy became suggestion. Suggestion became desire. And desire became action. By the time the crime occurred, both men had been transformed by a digital world that blurred right and wrong until neither could see clearly. An investigator described it best: "We weren't just investigating a murder. We were investigating years of online influence." This case became the most disturbing example in Vietnam of how deviant content, anonymous communities, and long-term exposure can push individuals toward actions they would never consider in a healthy environment. It became a turning point for public awareness. The internet is not only a tool, it is a place, and some places can change a person forever. In many crimes, motives are clear, but in this one, something unusual happened. The victim influenced the offender. The offender followed the victim's request. Yet the internet shaped them both. It was a crime with one offender, one dead victim, and one invisible accomplice. The digital world that enabled everything. Vietnam had never witnessed a psychological dynamic like this before. When the police report concluded, when the public calmed, and when the headlines faded, one truth remained. This crime was not born in a single night. It was born over 5 years. And those 5 years serve as a permanent reminder how dangerous unregulated online content can be, how slowly moral boundaries can be erased, how anonymity empowers the darkest impulses, how 2 human lives can be swallowed by a digital abyss. The tragic death of Dat will forever stand as a heartbreaking warning. Human beings can lose themselves completely when they follow desires shaped by the darkest corners of the internet. And Sang will face the harshest judgment of the law. But long after the final verdict is delivered, this case will remain. A case that changed how Vietnam views the internet. A case that exposed the fragile line between digital fantasy and real-world death. A case the nation will never forget.